From breaking up tech giants to canceling student loan debt, 2020 contender Elizabeth Warren is trying to break out of the pack with specific policies in a lot of areas. Could her abundance of ideas be one reason why she's moving up in recent polls? Warren is scheduled to meet with voters at a town hall in Burlington, Iowa next hour. That's where we find NBC News political reporter Ali Vitale, who's on the trail with Warren today. And here with me in Washington, Cyrus Beschloss, founder and CEO of College Reaction, a digital platform for college students to share their political opinions. Ali, bring us up to date, first of all, on what people are telling you out there in Iowa.
Andrea, there's a reason that I wanted to dig into this issue of whether Elizabeth Warren's policy focus is manifesting among voters on the campaign trail. I wanted to do this story in Iowa because it's a state where she's really heavily invested in terms of staff numbers. She's got over 50 people here on the ground, more than most of her competitors. And so it's important to see the way that she's spending her time on the campaign trail to see if that's percolating in the minds of voters. As far as I can tell here over the course of the past few days that I've been having these conversations, voters are picking up the policies and the plans that Elizabeth Warren seems to be putting down. Listen to what they told me.
I guess some people who don't want to be overwhelmed may not like a candidate who's more focused on policy, but I really think we need to have a candidate who is focused on solutions and has a plan. There are some candidates that I've kind of shied away from because they don't have any policies out there. And when people ask them questions, they don't really have much of an answer.
Iowa. The event is starting to kick off behind me, so it's going to get a little loud. But it's very typically Iowa for these voters not just to see a candidate once and make a decision, but because the candidates are here so often, they're going to see them early and often and be able to ask them questions. And so it's important to them that they start seeing an evolution, not just in terms of who this person is and how they're presenting themselves, but how they're answering policy-specific questions, Andrea.
And it's so great to see you in the midst of all of that, because that is such a classic Iowa event, the enthusiasm there on this holiday day. Cyrus, you've been talking to young voters in particular, and with some surprising results about which candidates they like, because your data are different from some of the more conventional wisdom about who appeals to whom.
Definitely. So our top line takeaways are the fact that so far, Joe Biden is leading the pack among young people at about 19% compared to Bernie Sanders at 18%, the president about 15%.
So that seems to be a margin of error with Biden and Sanders, at least.
At the lead, absolutely. But that's particularly striking because our polling has also suggested that young people are most enthusiastic about a female candidate or a candidate of color. And last we checked, Joe Biden is neither of those things.
So how do you figure out what's behind the data?
There might be a few factors powering that early lead. One, people know him. Name recognition obviously has an early hold on a lot of this early polling. But we have seen candidates like Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren who have benefited from a town hall bump. So more exposure to Democratic candidates on the debate circuit and through more town halls might shuffle up the rankings. And two is perceived electability, right? So most Democratic voters have to be concerned with a candidate that can beat Trump in 2020. And recent polling out of Quinnipiac has suggested that most think that Biden has the best chance to do that. So college students seem to be valuing safety in that respect, but we have to keep in mind that there's that disconnect between a female candidate or a candidate of color and the fact that they back Biden. So we think that the belief that he's able to beat Trump might be what's squaring that circle and explaining that disconnect.
And Ali Vitale, when you talk to Elizabeth Warren voters, there seem to be young people really do like that college debt cancellation plan from her.
Yeah, and there are certain policies certainly that they're latching onto. I think that I do hear a fair amount about what she wants to do on health care. I think that I hear a fair amount on what she wants to do on student loan debt forgiveness. And those are definitely hallmarks of her campaign trail speech when she talks specifically about student loan debt. But the thing that I've actually been struck by over the course of the last few days here, talking to over a dozen voters about what they care about as they make this decision, is the fact that they're just happy with the fact that Elizabeth Warren seems to have thought this whole thing through and that she has a plan for not just one thing, but a wide array of things. And I think that as they start parsing through this really large field of candidates, that's going to be something that continues to come up again, because Democratic primary voters, especially here in Iowa, do want to hear substance.
A few seconds left, Cyrus. The big issues for young people so far?
So far, our polling suggests that it's the economy, that it's healthcare, followed by student debt. And some candidates tend to twist their message and pander to young voters. Elizabeth Warren does not.
Very interesting point. And Cyrus, congratulations. You've got a big college graduation next week at Williams.
Thank you so
You've
much.
done so well and on to Stanford. So from success to success, keep the polls coming.
Thank you so much.
And Ali Vitale, great to hear from you. Thanks for being with us out there as Elizabeth Warren is preparing to speak.